Some cities are forged from the raw power of wealth. Vast fortunes poured into sketching grand visions of prosperity. Others rise commandingly from absolute power, where a monarch's will is the very blueprint of every architectural endeavor. But Dresden, in 1730, under the reign of August the Strong, was built from something far more potent, more captivating, and infinitely more formidable. The relentless, almost feverish ambition of one man determined to defy the relentless march of time, to etch his name into the annals of eternity, coupled with the quiet, unyielding toil of tens of thousands whose names have long been erased by the sands of history. In just a few short decades, this place transformed itself into a colossal stage where stone and dust, gold and porcelain, soaring church domes and magnificent palaces, and dreams too grand for a single generation to bear, converged and intertwined. For hundreds of years, people have sung praises to its magnificent beauty. Yet, how few have ever paused to ask a simple, yet profoundly heartbreaking question. What was the true cost of such blinding brilliance? Who bore the burden? Who inhaled the fine stone dust, day in and day out, until their lungs gave way, all to render lifeless statues immortal? Who bent their backs under the colossal weight of each sandstone block, so that future generations might marvel at a perfect archway? And who struggled for every meager groschen, purchasing a loaf of bread here, an egg there, desperately striving to feed their children day by day, in a city whose rising splendor seemed only to intensify the harshness of life for its ordinary inhabitants? Perhaps the most terrifying truth lies here. The more dazzling a city becomes, the more effortlessly it can conceal the quiet anguish and unseen sacrifices that ultimately forged its very foundations. As the first tendrils of dawn stretched across the Elbe River, Dresden in 1730 emerged not merely as a city, but as a colossal, perpetually restless machine, one that never truly slept. This was no mere urban center undergoing development. It was a living, breathing entity, relentlessly carving, building, and polishing itself with the very sweat of human endeavor, the grit of stone dust, and the unquenchable fire of ambition. In just 30 years, the population had more than doubled, surging from roughly 21,000 to 47,000 inhabitants, transforming the city into a vibrant crucible of hopes and fierce struggles. August the Strong, Elector of Saxony and King of Poland, poured his immense wealth without hesitation into lavish palaces, grand squares, and monumental statues, spending more than many other monarchs allocated to their entire armies. But if you could truly stand in Dresden at that precise moment, the very first sensation wouldn't have been the shimmering aura of luxury. Rather, it would have been the sharp, clean scent of freshly cut sandstone piercing your nostrils, the ceaseless thud and ring of chisels echoing like an unending drumbeat of labor, and a shimmering, golden dust dancing in the morning light, as if the entire city were being consumed by a colossal obsession, madly transforming everything into pure gold. Let us begin our journey from the Augustus Bridge, when the first light of day was still as delicate as a sheet of freshly pulled parchment from a mill. 17 robust sandstone arches spanned the churning Elbe, stretching over 400 meters and proudly asserting itself as one of the grandest and most impressive bridges of its era. The antiquated original bridge had been notoriously narrow, perpetually obstructing traffic and causing frustrating bottlenecks and delays. But the grand renovation, ongoing from 1727 to 1731, transformed this vital crossing into a powerful symbol of Dresden's burgeoning ambition to stride confidently into the modern age, to stand shoulder to shoulder with Europe's most illustrious capitals. Beneath its arches, the Elbe carried an indescribable acrid scent, a potent mix of tar from the boats, the pungent aroma of fresh fish, and the undeniable stench of urban sewage. The city was swelling, expanding day by day, and the river itself bore the very odor of that growth, at once vibrant and deeply unsettling. On the bridge surface, heavy carriages laden with building materials rumbled back and forth without cease, forming a continuous flow. Now, 2 carriages could pass each other with ease, a feat previously unimaginable on the cramped old structure. Simply by standing here, you could clearly witness the 2 strikingly contrasting faces of Dresden. To the left lay the old town, Altstadt, with its quiet, medieval core, where the regal towers of the royal palace ascended skyward early each morning, exuding an antique grace. To the right was the newer Neustadt, meticulously laid out with geometric precision, featuring broad avenues and uniform facades, all adhering to August's progressive new building codes and reflecting his grand architectural aspirations. The Elbe River was not just a waterway, but the very lifeblood of the entire region's commerce, carrying both sustenance and burgeoning prosperity. Barges laden with goods arrived from distant Bohemia, immense timber rafts floated downstream from the Saxon forests, and diligent fishermen tirelessly supplied fresh catches to an ever-growing populace. The aesthetic beauty on the bridge, with its exquisitely carved stone figures and the illuminating sunlight, was undeniably real. But another truth was equally, powerfully present. Behind the stone angels and polished lampposts lay a relentless, unforgiving machinery of labor that spared no one. From the bridgehead, our steps lead us along ancient cobblestone streets, drawing us deeper into the heart of August's personal obsession, the magnificent Zwinger Palace complex. While officially declared complete 2 years prior, for a ruler as consumed by grandeur and perfection as August, completion was merely a provisional state, never a true endpoint. The very air here hung heavy and thick with the pervasive scent of fine stone dust. Stonecutters, wielding sharp chisels with their calloused hands, meticulously carved every soft curve, every flowing drapery, every tiny cherub from the resilient Elbe sandstone with almost supernatural precision. It was a mastery honed over a lifetime, purchased at the steep price of fading eyesight and gnarled, often disfigured fingers. The brilliant Matthias Daniel Pöppelmann commanded the architectural vision. The renowned Balthasar Permoser oversaw the intricate sculptures, while countless nameless artisans beneath them traded their very health and lifespans for the perfection others would ultimately marvel at. After a single day's work here, you'd cough uncontrollably. After a week, you'd hawk up grey-yellow phlegm. And after a year, your lungs might well begin to petrify. A horrifying diagnosis of silicosis, silently claiming their lives. This was no mere hyperbole. This was the grim, unvarnished price of such exquisite beauty. As the nobility strolled leisurely beneath gilded arcades, ladies daintily lifting their embroidered gowns, gentlemen sporting powdered wigs more costly than a year's wages for a common laborer, the very individuals who conjured this magnificent spectacle remained virtually invisible to their eyes. Here, the surface was revered, while the hands that painstakingly created that surface were cruelly forgotten. When you truly reflect, it's a timeless lesson. The more splendid a creation, the more effortlessly it could mask the immense hardship, even the profound suffering, of those who had brought it into being. Leaving the Zwinger's opulent embrace, the rhythm of life shifts dramatically as we enter the Altmarkt, or Old Market Square, Dresden's bustling commercial heart. This was where high art ceded ground to the far more immediate and visceral demands of survival. The square itself presented a surprisingly orderly appearance, a direct reflection of the city's ambition to control and refine its public image. Houses were mandated to follow a uniform style, typically 3 or 4 stories high, boasting clean plastered facades and symmetrically balanced windows. August envisioned Dresden as a single, flawless work of art. Yet, a city cannot subsist solely on its splendid appearance. It thrives on wheat, on meat, on beer, on eggs, on the sweat-soaked labor and the meticulous penny-pinching of its working populace. The explosively growing population naturally fueled an equally explosive demand for everything imaginable. Many new residents were skilled craftsmen and artisans, drawn from far and wide by the allure of bustling construction sites and the promise of work. Amidst the boisterous clamor of bargaining and the rattle of carriage wheels, a cacophony of languages filled the air. The distinctive Saxon dialect, the melodic French of Huguenot refugees, and the vibrant Italian spoken by skilled builders and plasterers, specially invited from Europe's architectural capitals. A skilled German stonecutter might earn a respectable 8 to 10 groschen a day. An unskilled laborer, however, would typically receive a mere 2 to 3 groschen. A substantial loaf of bread cost 1 groschen, a tankard of beer only a few cheap pfennigs. but the price of eggs had doubled in just a few short years, adding significantly to life's daily struggles. These figures were not just monetary values. They eloquently explained the simmering resentment and palpable frustration that brewed between different segments of the working class. When an Italian artisan, due to his superior earnings, spent money more freely, envious glances and thinly veiled hostility were quick to surface. This human frustration was deeply real and profoundly dangerous, smoldering beneath the surface like an insidious underground fire. It reminds us that when society undergoes such rapid transformation, the vulnerable often fail to perceive the deeper, systemic injustices at play. Instead, they fixate on the faces of those nearest them, readily blaming one another. It is a perilous mistake that every generation risks repeating if they do not learn to look deeper, more critically, and more compassionately into the very essence of the problem. Venturing further east, beyond the polished facades and glittering veneer of the city center, Dresden revealed its most authentic self in the Pirnaische Vorstadt district. Here, there were no magnificent palaces, no opulent theaters, only cramped alleys, humble half-timbered houses, damp courtyards, and workshops huddled tightly together. But it was here that the city truly breathed, thrumming with its own distinctive rhythm. Children darted and played amidst the sun-dappled narrow passageways. Blacksmiths hammered red-hot iron, their forges roaring, sending sharp, ringing echoes through the air. Carpenters diligently planed wood, the sweet, earthy scent of sawdust perfuming the air. Neighbors chatted, laughed, borrowed tools from one another, and readily offered aid when illness struck. Work began at an exceptionally early hour, long before the sun had fully risen. Children and apprentices, often starting at a tender age, learned their trades by keen observation and with their small, often raw hands. Life was cramped and congested. Streets were so narrow that two carts struggled to pass each other. Drinking water was drawn from public wells, yet many preferred thin beer, believing it safer than the often dubious-tasting well water. Mortality rates were alarmingly high, particularly among children. For many families, a simple illness could spell utter devastation, lacking the means for proper treatment or vital medicine. And yet, within this challenging reality, there was still the aroma of freshly baked bread, the warmth of communal gatherings on feast days, and the sound of laughter after a week that, perhaps, had been slightly less arduous than usual. I believe the greatest value of this tableau lies precisely there. History is not solely a chronicle of kings and monumental constructions. It is also the quiet dignity of simple meals, of mothers staying awake through long nights watching over sick children, of fathers silently shouldering their burdens, of children forced to grow up far too soon. If subsequent generations only recall the magnificent domes and forget the humble kitchens and the hands cracked and calloused by ceaseless labor, then that memory becomes fundamentally unjust. Returning across the Augustus Bridge, we venture into Neustadt, where a strikingly peculiar edifice rises amidst the traditional Saxon landscape, the Japanese Palais. Even to contemporaries, it must have seemed utterly out of place, an exotic dream transposed onto German soil. The palace facade was still undergoing extensive renovations, wooden scaffolding clinging to its gracefully curved roof, yet life around it flowed on, oblivious to the construction's protracted timeline. In the square before the palace, artisans leaving their shifts hurried past, children played near the riverbanks, merchants busily transferred their wares, and boats laden with sandstone constantly docked. Behind the edifice, a meticulously shaped French Baroque garden was taking form, complete with intricately trimmed hedges, geometrically balanced pathways, and classical decorative statues. And then, there was the treasure August himself was most passionately obsessed with. Over 35,000 exquisite pieces of porcelain from Meissen, Europe's first and renowned porcelain manufactory, alongside thousands more from distant China and Japan. Porcelain at that time was esteemed more highly than gold, not solely for its inherent material value, but because it symbolized a profound scientific and artistic triumph over an Eastern secret that had eluded Europe for centuries. For August, it was tangible prestige, a bold declaration of both his boundless power and his refined aesthetic sensibility. He wanted the world to gaze upon Dresden and believe it immortal, an unparalleled capital of art and unparalleled luxury. Yet, here lay the poignant irony of his reign. A monarch who spent more on delicate porcelain vases than on his soldiers, who sought admiration through ephemeral marvels rather than the enduring stability of an empire. Some might laud this as the visionary foresight of an artist king, a magnificent patron of the arts. Others might decry it as the foolish vanity of an extravagant spendthrift. I contend that both perspectives hold a measure of truth. Individuals are rarely monolithic. They are a complex amalgam of ambitions, contradictions, and sometimes baffling choices. From the Japanese Palais, we return to the Altstadt, the Old Town, where another monumental edifice was steadily rising, one uniquely distinguished by the fact that it was not entirely in August's control. This was the Frauenkirche, the Church of Our Lady, a project nourished by the steady, cumulative donations of ordinary citizens, rather than solely by royal decree. The Protestant merchants and burghers sought to demonstrate that their piety and devotion were no less grand than the court's lavish display. Georg Baer, a brilliant and audacious architect, spearheaded the construction with a bold vision. A central church crowned by an immense stone dome that many contemporary experts deemed technically impossible. By 1730, the main body of the church had reached the cornice level. Walls and corner towers were clearly defined, but the colossal dome, its crowning glory, still lay ahead, a formidable challenge. Yet, even at this stage, anyone on the construction site could sense they were forging something unprecedented, a genuine architectural marvel. On site, rudimentary yet robust wooden cranes hoisted colossal stone blocks, weighing hundreds of kilograms, high into the air. Ropes strained and groaned under tension. A single misstep meant immediate loss of life. Stonemasons working on the foundations had to cut each block with such exquisite precision that the joints were virtually invisible, creating a structure of extraordinary strength and integrity. It was a level of craftsmanship that would have commanded the respect of even the ancient Romans. And here, history takes on a poignant, bitter edge. While monarchs lavished millions upon luxurious palaces for their courts, the citizens of Dresden, with their hard-earned, sweat-stained money, were constructing a building that would ultimately prove far more daring in many respects and profoundly more symbolic. Their response to the imperial ostentation was neither meek humility nor passive resignation. It was ingenuity, sophisticated craftsmanship, and a vibrant civic pride manifest through collective labor. Perhaps that too is a lesson worth passing down. Power can build quickly and grandly, but the faith and solidarity of a community construct something far deeper and more enduring. As the sun began its descent, Dresden once again transformed its visage, cloaking itself in a more ethereal, almost mythical glow. Along Kreuzstrasse, the flickering glow of lanterns met newly plastered walls, casting long, dancing shadows that transformed familiar street corners into liminal spaces, half real, half dream, brimming with unspoken tales. Unlike Berlin, with its rigid military curfews and stern regulations, Dresden's nightlife was not tightly reined in. Guards patrolled, certainly, but their presence didn't cast a stifling pall. This was a city of artists, of freer spirits, more a cultural hub than a military garrison. In the boisterous taverns, German laborers sat shoulder to shoulder with Italian plasterers. French painters conversed with Bohemian musicians. They drank together, listened to music together, but did not necessarily truly belong to one another. Each group clung to its distinct language and ingrained prejudices. A Saxon carpenter might grumble about those Italians earning double his wages for what he perceived as half the talent. An architect from Genoa might feign ignorance of German to evade complaints. Tobacco smoke, the heady scent of wine, lilting music, and an undercurrent of discomfort mingled, forming a complex social tapestry. In one corner of a tavern, the mournful lilt of a violin, the resonant tones of a keyboard, and light, lilting rhythms softened the harsh realities, offering a fleeting moment of peace. That was precisely Dresden's unique charm. Even amidst hardship, there was art, Even amidst envy, there was beauty, like resilient blossoms pushing through barren earth. Just outside the tavern door, a lone woman of the night leaned against an old doorway, awaiting customers. Perhaps barely in her 20s, her face already bore the weathered lines of fatigue and hardship, making her appear closer to 30. Cities that draw thousands of unattached men for labor inevitably bring with them a darker underbelly, and women without family or stable professions were often the first to pay the price for such rapid economic expansion. 10 o'clock struck. The city slowly hushed itself. Tomorrow morning, the hammers and chisels would ring out once more, as if today had never truly ended. Dresden, around 1730, was far from a harmonious, balanced city. Instead, it was a city of relentless friction, where sublime artistic ideals and the stark realities of social existence continuously clashed, like steel striking stone, producing both sparks and jarring reverberations. One man, August the Strong, with an immense aesthetic ambition, imposed his unyielding will upon an entire populace, and in doing so, created something that indeed became immortal. Yet, that immortality was purchased with the erased names of countless stonecutters, street vendors, toiling mothers, children who grew up in want, and laborers who lived and died, their existence now utterly unremembered. This, ultimately, is what lends this narrative its profound and enduring value for us today, transcending the boundaries of time and geography. For the most brilliant, most lauded achievements in history are so often underpinned by the quietest, most forgotten lives. And if we fail to recount that human dimension, to delve into those humble, often tragic destinies, then every lesson from the past will remain but half true, distorted, and profoundly incomplete. Yet perhaps, the most profound value Dresden offers transcends its sheer beauty or its historical grandeur. Instead, it compels us to confront a foundational question. What exactly are we admiring when we gaze upon a historical marvel? Are we solely captivated by pure aesthetic beauty, by the unparalleled brilliance of human craftsmanship? Or are we, perhaps subconsciously, venerating a system that masterfully channeled the toil, sweat, and very lives of the many into resplendent glory for a privileged few? When we encounter a magnificent architectural feat, do our eyes truly perceive the hands that meticulously shaped it, the calloused palms, the drops of labor-worn sweat? Or do we merely see the gleaming, opulent facade that history has meticulously preserved and burnished over centuries? The more deeply I ponder this, the clearer it becomes that this isn't merely an antiquated tale confined to 18th century Europe. This narrative resonates across all epochs, all civilizations. Throughout history, humanity has been readily swayed by the dazzling, superficial allure of grand achievements, yet often reluctant to delve into the robust foundations upon which they rest, foundations built upon silent suffering and profound sacrifice. Should future generations learn only to be awestruck and admire without cultivating the essential skill of critical questioning, without peering beneath the surface of inherent truths, they risk repeating precisely the costly errors that their predecessors paid dearly to comprehend. What truly resonates with me, indelibly imprinted upon my consciousness, isn't the lavish expenditure of August the Strong or the sheer opulence of Dresden with its gilded palaces. Instead, what I consistently recall are the poignant images of the countless small, unnamed individuals who breathed, toiled, and sacrificed their lives within that magnificent tableau. A stonemason, racked by a hacking cough on a frigid morning, his lungs slowly petrifying from the ceaseless fine dust. A hard-working mother meticulously counting every scarce groschen, just enough for bread and eggs, desperately striving to keep her child alive through unforgiving seasons of disease. A young apprentice, barely a child himself, forced prematurely to grasp the crushing weight of exhaustion and the profound responsibility of earning a livelihood. A young woman, her face still youthful but her eyes already heavy with the accumulated weariness of a life lived too quickly, standing outside a tavern in the fading light. These are the vignettes that imbue history with authenticity, making it vivid, tangible, and deeply resonant. And it is precisely this human element that elevates Dresden's beauty beyond mere superficiality or fleeting extravagance. Its beauty is profoundly deep and tragically epic, forged from the crucible of conflict, from the fierce human drive to aspire, from glaring social injustices, from unwavering religious conviction, from ceaseless, back-breaking labor, from extreme anguish, and from an undeniable, very human pride. Viewed through this lens, Dresden offers us an extraordinarily profound reminder. The true measure of a society's civilization isn't solely found in the magnificent structures it erects, its towering skyscrapers, its iconic landmarks. Rather, it is fundamentally assessed by how that society treats the very hands and lives that built them. A city might astonish the entire world with its breathtaking splendor, yet if its laborers are relentlessly exploited, if its vulnerable women are marginalized and forgotten, if its children are prematurely stripped of their innocence and childhood, then that glittering grandeur is inevitably accompanied by a weighty moral debt. This perspective isn't intended to negate the existence of beauty or to disparage monumental achievements. Quite the opposite. It serves to imbue beauty with the profound depth, inherent value, and true meaning it rightfully deserves. When we comprehend that behind every resplendent arch lies years of arduous labor, that beneath every sprawling public square are countless lives striving for mere sustenance, and that behind every majestic palace are untold sighs and silent sacrifices, we cease to perceive history as a mere beautiful but soulless postcard. Instead, we begin to see it as the vibrant, multifaceted tapestry of real human life, replete with all its inherent complexities, compelling contradictions, and ultimately, its enduring, tragic grandeur. This, I believe, represents the most invaluable legacy we can bestow upon succeeding generations. Let us instruct our children and grandchildren to marvel at beauty, but never, ever neglect to instill in them a profound respect for the labor, for the very hands that meticulously crafted that beauty. Share with them tales of kings and brilliant architects, certainly, but also tell them the stories of the anonymous stonemason, the struggling street vendor, the impoverished mother, the unseasoned apprentice child, and the young woman who found herself with no recourse in the deepening night. Allow them to grasp that behind every so-called golden age or era of greatness lie countless humble destinies, lives relegated to the periphery, cast into the historical shadows. Only by learning to perceive both the brilliance and the gloom, both the triumph and the immense cost, can humanity truly achieve moral maturity, render justice to the past, and seize the opportunity to construct a future that is genuinely more compassionate and humane. There exists a profound truth that the wisdom of age often imparts to us more vividly than to the young. The most enduring legacy, the most steadfast inheritance, isn't found in ostentatious displays or glittering material structures. Rather, it resides in the fundamental manner in which an epoch regarded and treated its people. Palaces may eventually fracture and crumble. Stone statues may succumb to the relentless erosion of rain and wind, and delicate porcelain may shatter into countless fragments. Yet, the invaluable lessons concerning human empathy and morality never truly vanish. Dresden, in 1730, therefore, transcends the simple definition of an ancient city. It stands as a profound mirror. Gazing into its depths, we perceive the past in all its dazzling brilliance and stark tragedy. But upon a more sustained reflection, we also discern the contours of our own present, revealing the very social issues that stubbornly persist in our contemporary world. Thus, as we draw this narrative to a close, perhaps the paramount takeaway isn't to merely recall Dresden's breathtaking splendor or its magnificent palaces and churches. Far more crucial is the realization that every civilization's story is simultaneously inscribed with two distinct inks. One, the luminous ink of glory and brilliant achievements, and the other, the somber ink of the immense price paid, of the untold, silent sacrifices. And only those individuals possessing the profound tranquility and keen insight to decipher both types of ink can truly comprehend history in its most complete and deeply meaningful form. Should this narrative compel you to pause and re-evaluate your perceptions of history, of beauty, of the inherent value of human labor, and of the true significance of any given epoch, then I invite you to remain with us on the subsequent leg of this journey. 4. The deeper we venture into the annals of the past, the more profoundly we come to understand humanity in the present day. We gain clearer insights into the foundational structures and the inherent burdens we currently inherit, and consequently, we learn to cherish those aspects of life that appear commonplace, yet were, in reality, purchased at the immense cost of countless hours of sweat, untold tears, and profound sacrifice.